Hi, I'm Steve Savarese, Executive Director of the Alabama High School Athletic Association, along with Jamie Lee, the Director of the Alabama High School Athletic Directors and Coaches Association. I welcome you to this update as we prepare for return to activities beginning June the 8th. First and foremost, I pray that you and your family are safe and remain that way. Continue to practice the social distancing guidelines that are provided by our Department of Public Health. So again, we welcome you today, and we'd like to cover a few of our updates that we released last week. First and foremost, we're very thankful to the Alabama State Department of Education, Dr. Eric Mackey, Mr. Terry Roller, and their entire staff for working collaboratively with the Alabama High School Athletic Association as we develop a plan to return to activities not only June the 8th, but we look forward to returning to activities this fall. Remember, everything we go over today is based on current data. That data may change at any time, but we're going to speak within current data, and we have our recommendations based on the place where we are today. This week, our governor, along with the Alabama Department of Public Health, will have an updated release, and we will adjust accordingly. As we begin, we will return on June 8th. Now, based on our Medical Advisory Board's recommendations, along with the Alabama State Department of Education, as well as 3 committees that we put together, a summer practice committee, fall sports committee, and our football committee, we discussed best practices and received input from our coaches of things they would like to have as we begin. We will reconvene with these contingency committees next week after we hear the governor's update. Please remember, mandatory summer practice in accordance with AHSAA bylaws are prohibited, but we recommend and encourage our student athletes and coaches to conduct weightlifting, conditioning. They may have skill development and workouts under the jurisdiction of their local schools. Local schools have always determined how long, how many, and what occurs during the summer at their school. Now, we also want you to follow all Department of Public Health and State Department of Education guidelines for return to school. That will also be released soon. So we encourage you to keep updated on that information. The health and safety of our student athletes has to be at the forefront of beginning any return to play. Screening. First of all of our student athletes and coaches should be screened before they're allowed to return. Non-essential personnel should not be allowed into any activities. If non-essential personnel are allowed, then those numbers will count toward your total numbers that are decided by the Department of Public Health. Today, that group number is 10. So that includes a coach, 9 athletes, and if you have a non-essential person within the group, then that would limit the number of athletes to 8. These groups will not be interchangeable. Today, currently, those numbers are 10. But let's say those numbers were increased to 20 or even to 25. Then those groups, because of contact tracing, would not be interchangeable at all. So please keep a roll of everyone who is within those groups as we begin the return to play. Also, if any of the individuals that are involved in activity demonstrate signs or symptoms of COVID-19, have a temperature, and so on, these students should not be allowed to work out. Encourage them to stay at home. The term today that a lot of folks are using is social distancing. we would like to use the term physical distancing because it's incumbent on the personnel who are organizing these events, our leaders, our coaches, to be sure that we maintain social distancing or physical distancing with all of our activities. If we're having a meeting with 10 individuals, we should maintain physical distancing. If we're outside and we have an activity, we should maintain physical distancing. If you cannot maintain physical distancing, such as the fact when you're in the weight room lifting weights and you have to have spotters, let's say on each end of the bar, all involved, if you come within 6 feet, should wear some type of face cloth. It does not have to be an N95 mask or any specific type of mask. You just need to have some type of face covering when you do this. We will have a set of basic health guidelines or recommendations, suggested guidelines for you that will be posted on the AHSAA website once the governor releases her new recommendations, as long as the Alabama State Department of Education. We will collaborate together and we will post all of these guidelines well in advance of your June 8 return to school. We also want to encourage you to look for substances where you can clean equipment. It's very important that you sanitize equipment after every use. For example, if a student is on a weight bench and a student gets up before the next student goes down, you will have to clean that equipment and you will have to clean the bar in between use. Based on current guidelines today, that is what you would have to do. So there are many other guidelines we'll have, such as washing your hands before all activities for 20 seconds under hot water using soap. There'll be a lot of these recommendations. I'm not going to go over all of them with you, but the encouraging part of all this is we will be able to return back to school under a beginning sense of normalcy. We'll have a new normalcy for cleanliness that we'll have to follow, as we hope we can demonstrate that we can follow these guidelines and increase numbers where we could have a return to normal activities this fall. Some other items I'd like to go over with you. Many times we have the question, can we have tryouts during the summer? Under AHSAA bylaws, again, there's no mandatory practice, so there's no tryout period. But under the circumstances with COVID-19, you may have to limit the number of groups that you have during the summer at your school. So you may limit groups. You're only going to be in groups of 10. You may not be able to have 10 groups of 10. You may only, due to time constraints, have 6. So anyone who does not get to work out and that would normally try out for the team, we encourage you to allow them to come back during the normal tryout periods, either 1 week before the season, at the beginning of the season, or any other designated tryout period. There will be no summer competition this summer. Generally, we are allowed 3 weeks of competition at the beginning of June, and then the last week of June and a couple of weeks into July for fall sports. Understandably, because of COVID-19, we have not had time to keep our kids in shape or to acclimate them to any type of heat conditioning. Therefore, we will not have summer competition. We will ease our kids back. And I encourage all sport activities to do this, to just think that we can place our kids back on the field or court without any type of acclimation. Strength training condition would subject our kids definitely to more of a chance for an injury. So we will we will phase our return to activities in increments, and hopefully again by the fall we'll be back to a sense of normalcy. But there will not be any summer competition this summer. Schools always should prepare to provide accommodations for those students who are at risk, who demonstrate any signs of COVID-19, any absence from your activities because of COVID-19. This should not be held against them, and we should all work with our parents who might feel like it's unsafe for their students to return to school now, knowing that you will have another tryout period once the season starts. Now, there was a new bylaw passed by our membership this April. It begins June the 1st, that allows our fall sports to begin practice 1 week early if they did not have a spring evaluation period. Because all of our sports did not have a spring evaluation period, then everyone will have the opportunity, if we are allowed, to start 1 week early. So we look forward to utilizing that bylaw. For this year only, winter sports, because you were not able to hold a spring evaluation period during the first 2 weeks of school, you may hold a 5-day tryout period within a 5-day period of time. If you do not want to utilize that 5-day period, you may start practice 1 week early. Spring sports will have an additional accommodation. After the first 2 weeks, you may hold a 5 out of 10-day period, or you may start practice 1 week earlier. If you choose not to start practice early or have a fall evaluation period, or you just have one of those two, you may have in addition a 5 out of 5-day period anytime after your season is over. So spring sports will have 2 evaluation periods for next year. So that's a general overview of us starting back. The key elements being, we should, and I still say should, it'll be based on current data, return on June the 8th. Please, prior to June the 8th, remember we are in a dead period, all school facilities are closed, and there should be no activity on your campus prior to June the 8th. Once we return June the 8th, you again will be able to start in small groups, currently groups of 10, non-interchangeable groups, and you must provide all cleanliness guidelines that are provided by the Alabama Department of Public Health. I also want to caution you that some areas of the state, some areas may be considered hot spots, and they may be more restrictive than other areas of the state. You will always have to follow the guidelines within your community, and of course, those guidelines from your local Board of Education, remembering that school workouts are under the jurisdiction of the local school system in your community. Please check with your principal, check with your superintendents, follow all those guidelines that they will outline for you before you return to play. Lastly, we will provide a checklist of information on our website for you to go through prior to every workout, along with our suggested guidelines. Again, these will be available beginning after, or they'll be available after the governor's update this week. So again, I thank you for being with us today, and it's my privilege at this time, or when we come back, it'll be my privilege to introduce to you or have on the podium Jamie Lee, the director of the Alabama High School Athletic Directors and Coaches Association, to go over with you some very important updates for the summer. Then I will be back to go over some frequently asked questions that might be of interest to you. We really appreciate you being on the broadcast. We thank WOTM for producing this, along with our staff, David Holtzford and Ron Ingram. So thanks for joining us today, and I'm going to turn it over to Jamie Lee after the break.
Did you know that suicide is the second leading cause of death for ages 10 to 24? It is also one of the leading causes of preventable death in our nation. It is time we all start to talk more about youth suicide and how we can change these statistics. My name is Nick Saban, head football coach at the University of Alabama, and I'm working with the Jason Foundation and the AHSAA to address this prevent youth suicide.
While you're at home with family for the next few weeks, don't put off scheduling home repairs. Call Ox Foundation for a free estimate. With more time at home, you tend to notice things you haven't in the past. Mold and moisture in your basement or crawl space, uneven driveways, stair-step cracks in your exterior brick, uneven floors and doors. If your home is showing weakness, it's time to get strong. How strong? Ox Strong. Stay strong, Alabama.
WOTM is the television provider for all Alabama High School Athletic Association championship events and special programs. WOTM is your home for the Super 7 football, state finals basketball, baseball and softball state championships, the AHSAA weekly show, and WOTM also produced the first ever football playoff show, Super 7 preview show, and reclassification reveal show. Your exclusive home for all things AHSAA is WOTM. Contact your local cable provider to request WOTM to your channel line.
Good afternoon, and I want to thank Coach Savarese for the opportunity to be with you today. I'm very excited to bring you some information from the Coaches Association, the ADs and Coaches Association. First of all, I want to say a special congratulations to Coach Steve Mass, the head football coach and athletic director at St. Paul's Episcopal School in Mobile. Coach Mask has been selected to be the head coach of the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star football game. That will be the 34th annual football game. It'll be held here in Montgomery on Saturday, December the 12th. And we are very excited for Coach Coach Mask to be able to lead that team. Looking forward to working with him and his staff. And so, Coach, congratulations. Look forward to working with you on selecting an outstanding group of young men to represent our state. Also excited today to announce that our summer conference, the 2020 Summer Conference, will be a virtual event. We are not going to cancel or postpone that event. We're going to host that event virtually. Very excited to be able to do that. As you know, our Principal and AD Conference that was scheduled for June 2nd and 3rd was postponed. And we're going to combine those two events. We're going to combine that Principal and AD event with the Summer Conference to create and have some professional development opportunities there and provide the necessary information we need to give you from the AHSAA. So that event will take place virtually. We are still in the process of putting all that information together, and as soon as we get those details finalized, we will get information out to our member schools. So look for that coming out sometime in the first part of June. Along those lines, a lot of our coaches would ask and want to know, understandably, what about the summer conference rules clinics? And in addition to our summer conference professional development for our principals and ADs, our rules clinics will also be held virtually this time. We are in the process now of creating video, putting together content for those summer clinic rules clinics, specifically volleyball and football to get started with, but again, those will be held virtually. And so as we get that information finalized and know what to do with how we're going to handle that, how to get you to register and that kind of thing, we will reach out to you. We will put that information on our website. So please look forward to that event. We're very excited about being able to do those rules clinics for you virtually. As Coach Savarese mentioned, we will not have any competition this summer. So one disappointing thing from our perspective at the Coaches and ADs Association is we will not be able to host our annual All-Star games. Our North-South All-Star events will be canceled for this summer. Not only was it have an issue with competition, but we have an issue here in the city of Montgomery with housing and the ability to be able to house those student athletes. Again, the number one priority is the health and safety of those athletes. And so we are not going to be able to host those All-Star events. However, we are still going to recognize those student athletes and the great accomplishment about being selected as a North-South All-Star recipient. So we are looking forward to being able to recognize those student athletes and the coaches that were selected. We have plans to send something to the schools so those schools can recognize their athletes in the upcoming school season, that they were selected to be an All-Star, as well as the coaches. At this point, as you know, some of our teams have already been announced publicly. Our basketball teams, our volleyball team, our cross-country team has all been announced. And I'd like to say that look for this week from our staff and in the media, we will announce the spring sports all-star team. So today you can expect a release on golf, I believe it is. We will announce our golf team today, tennis team tomorrow, and as we go on through the week, we'll also announce the softball team, the baseball team, and the soccer team. So again, we are looking forward to being able to announce those teams and recognize those student athletes. We have a desire to do that. We plan on doing that, and so please look for that in your local media. I want to remind you also along the All-Star events that our North-South football game that's usually held in the summer in conjunction with all of our other events has been moved to December. This year we will host a North-South football game to recognize those senior athletes. It will take place the week right after the Alabama-Mississippi game. So very excited about moving back to that. We've done that in the past. I'm very excited about being able to do that. And so we will host that Alabama-Mississippi game on December 12th, and the very next Saturday we will host the North-South game to recognize another 80 senior football players for the course of the year. And then finally, one final note from the Coaches Association. As you know, we have, in conjunction with the NFHS and the NCAA, we have hosted a June Scholastic basketball event last year for our boys and girls. This summer we intended to do the same, but based on the NCAA's decision to postpone recruitment through June, we have decided to postpone our Scholastic event. So the showcase, the Elite 100 showcase, has been postponed at this time. We are looking at the possibility of being able to do that sometime in August or maybe early September. But again, that's based on information from the NFHS and the NCAA, what they might recommend and what they might allow. So it has been postponed. We will look for final statements on that as we get details from the NCAA. So, but if there's anything that I can do for you at this association, please don't hesitate to reach out. I hope this is information that's been valuable to you today. And again, I want to thank Coach Savarese for allowing us to be here on this conference with you today. At this time, we'll take another break. When we come back, Mr. Savarese will be here to answer any frequently asked questions that you might have and give you some final words from the show.
Did you know that suicide is the second leading cause of death for ages 10 to 24? It is also one of the leading causes of preventable death in our nation. It is time we all start to talk more about youth suicide and how we can change these statistics. My name is Nick Saban, head football coach at the University of Alabama, and I'm working with the Jason Foundation and the AHSAA to address this serious national health issue. Visit jasonfoundation.com to learn what you can do to help prevent youth suicide.
While you're at home with family for the next few weeks, don't put off scheduling home repairs. Call Ox Foundation for a free estimate. With more time at home, you tend to notice things you haven't in the past. Mold and moisture in your basement or crawl space, uneven driveways, stair-step cracks in your exterior brick, uneven floors and doors. If your home is showing weakness, it's time to get strong. How strong? Ox Strong. Stay strong, Alabama.
WOTM is the television provider for all Alabama High School Athletic Association championship events and special programs. WOTM is your home for the Super 7 football, state finals basketball, baseball and softball state championships, the AHSAA weekly show, and WOTM also produced the first ever football playoff show, Super 7 preview show, and reclassification reveal show. Your exclusive home for all things AHSAA is WOTM. Contact your local cable provider to request WOTM to your channel line.
I'm good. Welcome back. I want to say we're glad to have you all back. I want to thank Jamie Lee. Again, we're very blessed in our state to have a wonderful director of our Coaches Association, truly cares about our student athletes. And I know how disappointed he is, as well as the rest of us, not to be able to host our summer conference as well as our all-star games. That's always a highlight of our summer, and we think one of the greatest events in the country. But we'll have it again. And again, our foremost priority right now is to get our kids back. Let's get them in shape again so we can return to some type of normalcy. As we go over some frequently asked questions, the first question that we receive many times is, Coach, can we have summer competition? Again, there'll be no summer competition this summer, but what about camps? Can I hold the camps for your students within your school, within your feeder schools? You're able to host normal activities. Remember, the restrictions are based on being able to contact trace many student athletes across the state, and so there can't be any interscholastic play between school where numbers would increase or crowds would be assembled. But just hosting a camp, if you bring someone into your school, can you bring someone into your school to hold a camp? The answer to that is all yes, but you will still have to follow the guidelines established by the Department of Public Health on how many students you can have in assembly at one time. So right now, that number is 10. We just got off a conference call with the National Federation and their Medical Advisory Board. They are recommending 10 as all of our schools try to begin activities in June or July. We'll await, again, our governor's order in the Department of Public Health this week, and then we will update our information accordingly. Who is responsible for overseeing the guidelines, the recommended guidelines from the Department of Public Health, State Department of Education, as well as the association? Each member school, their administration, these summer events fall under the jurisdiction of the local Board of Education. So it's incumbent on the professionals that oversee these young people to make sure we follow these guidelines. I've been asked many times, do you think the coaches in the state of Alabama will maintain these guidelines? And I said, absolutely. They've done an outstanding job prior to this time. They've already held accordingly to not allowing the student athletes to participate, and our coaches love their kids, and they're going to make sure that they do what's absolutely best, first to keep them safe, and the second to get them back involved in activity so we can move forward as we enter this new phase of how to live with COVID-19. And we've all have to learn new health practices in order to live with COVID-19. Can we, once groups are established for whatever size, can we interchange those groups? Can I have, if we have a group of 10, can I have 5 and then switch 5? No, absolutely not. You will be only able to have specific groups. You choose who's in those groups. They cannot be interchanged at any time. Therefore, if one of those individuals developed COVID-19, you would be able to come back, and the Department of Public Health would be able to contact trace and see who was in contact with those individuals. Can we have tryouts? Again, you may not have tryouts under the guidelines of the association, but you may determine who is in a group, how many of those groups you have, and if that leaves out some young people, then you will allow them to come back at a later time to try out. Can you have 7-on-7s? Yes, you may have 7-on-7 if you're allowed to have more than 10 in a group, because you would, right now, we're only allowed to have 5 in a group. Can a basketball team practice against each other? Yes, they will. If they get within 6 feet, they have to wear, and we encourage this with all of our athletes, face coverings. Can you have multiple groups at the same time? Absolutely. Remember, the key number for physical distancing is 6 feet. So if I have to have a 6-foot circumference around us, if I have 10 student athletes, that's 360 square feet. So let's just say 400 square feet. And if I have groups outside of each other, 400 square feet in a group, and then I have some space, I have another group of 400, then that is correct. You're able to do that. Can I have multiple groups in a weight room? As long as they don't interchange, as long as they don't enter each other's space. can have multiple groups on a football field, softball field, so on, as long as they don't interchange and they don't enter each other's space. Also, can I have the volleyball team in the gym? Can I have the softball team and baseball team and football team all at the school? Currently, under the guidelines we have, yes, you could, but you have to maintain the correct grouping size and you cannot interchange. You also cannot cross paths. We do not want to have 100 kids in the parking lot at the same time. So you may have to schedule, the administrators would have to schedule student athletes and coaches to be there at different intervals in order to keep them from crossing paths during their workouts and conditioning. Do you have to clean the bars? Do you have to clean the balls? Do you have to clean the bats? All yes. You have to keep everything clean at all times before it can be used by someone else. If I'm having an activity with a basketball, once that group of 10 activity with a basketball is concluded, I have to clean the ball before it can go to someone else. Also, the entire weight room facility would have to be cleaned at the end of each day, making sure it was safe for the new group that would be coming in the next day. Physicals. We've had a lot of discussion about pre-participation physicals. Currently, the bylaws are they're good for 1 calendar year or till the end of that month. At the request of the Medical Advisory Board, since at the time they made the decision, you were not even able to see a doctor at that time unless it was an extreme emergency. They asked to postpone the ending date of physicals until the first fall contest practice, first practice in the fall. So let's say it's July 27th or August 3rd, depending on when you choose to start. You will have to have an updated physical before you start. Now, one of the issues we might run into is we're not able to have mass physicals of 200 kids. Remember, we're all going to be under numbers guidelines, at least within the next couple of phases as we return. So we encourage you to ask your student athletes to start scheduling their physicals with their local doctor, their primary physician. Let them start that process. Some school districts may still be able to have larger groups, maybe 50, maybe 25, depending on numbers. But right now, we can't count on that. So we encourage you to encourage your students to start going to their doctors and getting their physicals as soon as they can. One of the other questions we receive all the time is about professional development and CEUs for our summer conference. Since it's moving to virtual, will we still be able to receive a CEU or a PLU? The State Department of Education has still approved our conference as for administrators to receive PLUs and the rest of the attendees to receive CEUs. So we encourage you to register online for that conference. We're going to have some very, very valuable information during that conference. Number one, as we transition from C2C schools to Dragonfly, if your schools have not signed up for a Dragonfly training, we encourage you to do that before the summer conference, because we will have a more advanced Dragonfly training during our conference. We're also going to provide you information as our world changes with touching money, touching tickets, with a ticketless system. We'll be providing you information for online ticketing sales for your events. By then, we will have our medical director in attendance, Dr. James Robinson, and Dr. Robinson will update us on the latest COVID-19 practices. And we should know about fans attending games, how many we may have to have, what are the guidelines we'll have to follow. So that conference in July will be extremely important for everyone to attend virtually. You know, I never thought that I would live in my 67 years to see us host a conference where we couldn't shake hands and give each other a hug and welcome everybody back. It'll be different, but this new norm is our way to live with COVID-19 until we have a vaccine where everyone can be safe as we return to public participation. I've gone over a few of the frequently asked questions, but again, I want to thank you for taking part with us today. I want to encourage you to please follow all the guidelines provided by our Center for Disease Control, our Alabama Department of Public Health, because if we do what we need to do now, we'll have more of an opportunity to return to normal in the fall. You know, our numbers continue to level out. Our numbers continue to decline in some areas. We want to, because of the guidelines that our governor has put in place and Department of Public Health, we're able to do some of the things we're able to do now. So we encourage you to follow those guidelines so we may open up school on June the 8th and begin activities again. We are really looking forward to that date where we can be back with you in sport. We appreciate you being with us today, and we hope God continues to bless you and keep you safe. Thank you.